Venue pulsed with vibrant energy, a sea of fans clad in boots and denim, their faces alive with excitement. Tonight was special. George Strait was making his long-awaited comeback, the kind that stirred palpable emotions even in those who weren't fans. Ray Thompson stood in the shadows, the weight of the evening tugging at him, nearly drowning him in a deluge of memories. The lights dimmed, and anticipation crackled in the air, filling the room with charged whispers. For Ray, every clap of thunderous applause felt like a rumble through his heart, igniting a storm of anxiety. A lump formed in his throat as he took a step back, breathing in the familiar scent of sweat and beer, remnants of a life he once yearned for, but lost. As George readied himself to step into the spotlight, Ray was swept away by a wave of recollections, flashing through his mind like scenes from a film he wished he could forget. He saw that fateful night, the date etched into his memory, when the crowd had surged forward in excitement, pushing George dangerously close to the edge. In that fleeting moment, Ray had acted on impulse, lunging forward to grab George and pull him back to safety. The chaos around them faded as time slowed, and Ray felt the weight of connection and purpose, the adrenaline flowing, heart racing. But the aftermath had been harsh. Fame, with all its blinding lights and shadows, hadn't spared Ray. A blistering flashback jolted him. The sound of sirens and shouts swirled in his mind. Protecting George had earned him gratitude, but had stolen his aspirations, chaining him to anonymity. He had forfeited his own dreams for someone else's, and the guilt had become a bitter companion in his life of solitude. "Hey, anyone seen the guardian angel?" a nearby voice called out, shattering his thoughts. Ray turned to see a young woman, a journalist, her eagerness palpable. "I'm following a lead about the mystery behind George's savior," she said, excitement dancing in her eyes, rife with ambition. For a moment, Ray felt the weight intensify, something inside him bristling at her words. He wanted to vanish into the walls, to escape the spotlight that nearly choked him. "That's not me," he managed to say, a quiet protest. The truth felt like an anchor, dragging him deeper into the abyss of his own doubts. "Please, people want to know. You saved him. You should tell your story." Her words swirled in the air, mixing with the music that now filled the hall, highs and lows swirling like the whirlwind of his thoughts. "No one would want to hear it," Ray's voice trembled, cracking under the weight of his shame and fear. He could already feel the walls closing in, the sensation of judgment bearing down on him, squeezing tighter with every heartbeat. Why not? Every hero has a tale. "I saw a glimpse of something incredible," she urged, her eyes searching his for answers, but finding only shadows. Ray stepped back, the longing for clarity battling the fear of exposure. What would it mean to unravel his secret, to risk rejection for the chance at understanding? He grappled with this as the crowd erupted into cheers. The steely facade surrounding George, now emerging on stage, only deepened the cracks in Ray's heart. As George smiled, waves of admiration washed over him, the very essence of resilience, yet Ray could not share in that light. He remained firmly rooted in the dark. "Will they ever understand?" he whispered, an inward plea biting at his resolve, spiraling into a distance where hopes were buried. In those shadows, the melody of life continued to play, unmistakable and bittersweet, leaving Ray to grapple with both the weight of his past and the hopes of a future he had forsaken. Time seemed to fold upon itself, dragging Ray back into memories that flickered like an old film reel. His thoughts drifted through the years, to a simpler time when dreams danced like fireflies in the night, and music poured through him like a sweet, hopeful melody. Ray sat in his childhood bedroom, the walls adorned with posters of country music legends, George among them, his heart fluttering with the thrill of possibility. As a boy, he could often be found strumming a weathered guitar, its strings sometimes frayed from overuse, but each worn note was a piece of his spirit coming alive. His mother's voice called from the kitchen, a gentle reminder to join her for dinner. "Ray, time to eat. You'll never make it if you don't fuel the dreams," she would say, her warmth wrapping around him like a loving embrace. He could almost hear her now, the echoes of her encouragement fueling his aspirations. "You've got to chase after what sets your heart on fire, Ray. You've got a gift," she often told him, her eyes glistening with pride, even in the toughest of times. She worked 2 jobs just to keep the household afloat, her hands weathered but always willing, reminding Ray of the value of hard work. Years later, Ray and George found each other on a local stage, both eager to perform in a small-town bar. They had struck up a friendship over shared laughter, and late-night guitar jams, their dreams intertwining in joyous camaraderie. Ray remembered the way George's eyes lit up when he spoke of his aspirations, the purity of that youthful hope stark against the life-heavy shadows he often bore. "Man, you've got that southern charm, Ray. People love that," George had said, slapping him on the back, the sound echoing through the smoky bar. "You should record something." "I believe in you." "I don't know, George. What if I'm not good enough?" Ray had replied hesitantly, the self-doubt gnawing at him. "Hey, confidence comes from the heart, not the stage. Trust me, you're worth it," George had insisted. Their conversations were simple, but woven with the kind of dreams that stretch beyond the horizon, where they could almost taste the success that seemed just beyond their grasp. But everything changed that night, the accident that altered the course of their lives forever. From the laughter and music to the sirens and chaos, Ray saw how quickly joy could spiral into despair. After George's recovery, Ray's shadows thickened, grief and guilt wrapping around him like a cloak. He withdrew into anonymity, while George emerged more radiant than ever. Ray watched as George shot to fame, his album hitting the charts like an unstoppable force. The country music world embraced George, and Ray felt both pride and loss, a bittersweet mix that kept him tethered to his past, but paralyzing his own dreams. Their connection faded, like a fading star, and Ray remained lurking in the shadows, the janitor in a world of bright lights. He walked the echoing halls of the venue now, cleaning up remnants of others' joy, while his own aspirations were swept along the floor, lost beneath discarded bottles and cups. He imagined every note of George's music reverberating through the space, a painful reminder of what he longed for, yet felt unworthy to claim. Is this it? Just cleaning up the mess while the world moves on? Ray pondered, gripping the mop tightly, imagining it was a microphone. Deep down he knew he had to confront his inner turmoil, the frustration with himself, coupled with fear of stepping back into the light. Maybe it's time to write again, he thought. What if I could pour my heart into something genuine? He found himself at a crossroads, struggling against a tide of doubt that threatened to pull him under. Suddenly, he remembered a song they had started writing together late one evening, laughter punctuating the seriousness of their dreams. As he recalled those moments occupied with the thrill of possibilities, Ray felt a flicker of hope stir within him. What if I could finish it? The question brushed against his heart like a soft breeze. He glanced at the lingering expectations in George's concert hall, celebrating someone who seemed almost too far away, yet that thin thread of their past remained, waiting to be woven back together. Ray's heart ached for the authentic connection they once shared, hoping it was still alive. Lost in these thoughts, Ray made his way outside, where the cool night air greeted him like an old friend. The sky glittered above, stars twinkling with stories of their own. He sat on the steps of the venue, solitude wrapping around him, both a comfort and a restless longing. Maybe it's time to reclaim what's mine, he whispered to the stillness. This time, it felt lighter, as though that statement held the promise of something greater, a turn toward authenticity. With every moment of self-reflection, he resolved to seize the dreams buried within, and finally, perhaps, share the hidden melody of his life. Sunlight streamed through the narrow window of Ray's small apartment, illuminating the dust motes suspended in the air. He stared at the guitar leaning against the wall, untouched and gathering dust, a stark reminder of the passion he had abandoned. How long had it been since he'd felt alive, strumming melodies that once filled his heart with fire? Now, silence echoed around him, amplifying the weight of unfulfilled dreams. Ray's daily routine had solidified into a monotonous cycle. Wake up, clean the empty venue, retreat to his cramped apartment, battling waves of loneliness. Each day felt like an exercise in futility, with the vibrancy of his past drowned beneath the burden of regret. The more he cleaned, the more he felt invisible, a mere shadow in a world teeming with life and laughter. "Hey, Ray, how's it going?" Marty, his seasoned friend and fellow janitor, greeted him one morning, his face etched with kindness. The warmth of their friendship always contrasted sharply with Ray's pervasive isolation. Same old, Ray replied, managing only a half-hearted smile. "You don't pick up that old guitar anymore, do you?" Marty pressed, concern shining in his eyes. "It doesn't really matter, no one wants to hear me," Ray admitted, voice barely above a whisper. His heart tightened with the familiar pang of self-doubt. Don't sell yourself short. You've got a gift. Everyone deserves to be heard, Marty encouraged, the sincerity in his tone pulling at something deep within Ray. But Ray felt trapped, haunted by the fear of judgment, the echoes of his failures running like a reel in his mind. George's rise to fame only amplified his sense of inadequacy. After all, he was the one who had saved George, yet it felt like their connection dwindled every day. One evening, as Ray mopped the venue's floor after a small concert, he overheard patrons eagerly discussing George's upcoming tour. "Did you hear George is coming back? His last concert was unforgettable." Their excitement cut through Ray like a bittersweet knife. Will he ever know what I did for him? The thought clung to Ray, twisting within him, tightening his throat as he wondered if he ever truly mattered. Yet that night, something shifted within him as the weight of sadness pulled him under. Ray picked up his neglected guitar, the wood warm against his fingertips as he strummed softly. Memories poured back, longing, heartache, dreams. Each note resonated within him, stirring courage he thought he had lost. "Maybe I can write something," he mused, the spark rekindling the harmonies of hope from deep inside. He closed his eyes, allowing lyrics about his darkness, loneliness, and the desire to reclaim his voice to flow through him, each line authentic and raw. Days passed as Ray poured himself into his song, the fears that had once locked him away, transformed into verses woven with resilience, and for the first time in years, he felt a renewed desire to share this part of himself with the world. Then came a local open mic night, an invitation he could no longer ignore. As he watched others perform their hearts out, Ray felt the weight of anxiety claw at him, but amid the nerves, he also sensed that familiar adrenaline, the very thing that had once driven his passion. When he took the stage, his heart raced, yet with each breath he felt the audience's energy pulsing around him, lives intertwining, echoes of connection awakening. He had arrived not just as Ray the janitor, but Ray the artist, ready to reclaim his narrative. As he started to play, the chords ignited a fire within him, grappling with emotions long buried. The lyrics flowed from his heart, revealing his loneliness and longing for acceptance. For those few moments he felt whole, a spirit released from the burdens he had carried. The applause that followed felt like a warm embrace, pulling him from the shadows. Maybe it's possible, he thought as a smile broke free across his face. He was no longer invisible. In that moment on stage, Ray discovered that his voice mattered, not just to him, but to a world in search of connection. With every strum, the ghosts of his past began to fade, replaced with the exhilarating possibility of the future, one where he could finally harmonize his own melody in a life worth living. Ray awoke the next morning, sunlight streaming through his window as a gentle warmth wrapped around him. Sitting on the edge of his bed, he felt a strange, unfamiliar lightness in his chest. The night before had awakened something dormant, a flicker of purpose that resonated deeply within him. For the first time in years, Ray smiled, the contours of his mouth reflecting a newfound resolve. He headed to the coffee shop down the street, the scent of fresh brews awakening his senses. As he sipped his coffee, he noticed the barista, a young woman with bright eyes and an easy smile. She caught his gaze as he smiled back, and something in her expression mirrored the elation building inside him. "Hey you look happy today," she said, her voice bright like the morning sun. "Yeah, I guess I am. I performed last night for the first time in forever," he admitted, the words spilling out before he could think twice. Her eyes widened with genuine interest. "No way, what did you sing?" "A song I wrote about, well, everything," he replied, feeling a spark of confidence. "It felt like I was finally being heard." "That's incredible. You should do it again. Where can I find your music?" she asked eagerly, instantly adding fuel to Ray's burgeoning fire. I haven't recorded anything. Just played a few open mics for now," he said, suddenly feeling the weight of vulnerability crash back in. "You should really think about recording. There's a whole world out there that could use your voice," she encouraged, her conviction resonating with him. "I'd love to hear it." As he left the coffee shop, her words lingered in his mind. What if he could record a track? What if he could share his journey and connect with others who felt similarly lost? He hurried back to his apartment, excitement bubbling within him. Ray spent the following days honing the song he had shared at the open mic, adding layers of lyrics and melodies that reflected an intense connection to his past and the journey he now embraced. His confidence was growing, and as he scribbled notes on scraps of paper and strummed his guitar, He felt the shadows retreating piece by piece, yet lurking beneath the surface was a seed of doubt. Could he really do this? His journey from forgotten janitor to emerging artist seemed both exhilarating and daunting. One night, under the dim light of his apartment, he pulled out the old guitar George had gifted him years ago. It felt heavy, yet comforting in his hands. "I wish you were here to guide me, George," he murmured to himself, thoughts of his friend enveloping him like a soft blanket. "You always knew how to lift me up. I need your spirit now, more than ever." For the first time, Ray began to weave the story of their friendship into his music, contrasting George's triumphs with his own struggles. It was about celebrating the highs and grappling with the lows, about finding strength in vulnerability. Finally, he reached out to a local recording studio he'd heard about, battling nerves as he dialed the number. The conversation flowed easier than he expected, and before he knew it, he had arranged time to record. On the day of the recording session, Ray arrived at the studio, a mix of excitement and jitters swirling in his stomach. The sight of the equipment and the bustling atmosphere sparked a thrill in him. He took a deep breath and shared a small prayer, desperate for clarity and courage. "Hey, are you Ray?" The engineer, a jovial man with a ready smile, greeted him, extending a handshake. "Yeah, that's me," Ray answered, the handshake grounding him, anchoring him in this new experience. "Let's hear what you've got." As Ray played, something changed within him. Each note resonated not only in the studio but also within himself. Engaging with the instruments and the crew reinvigorated his passion for music. He sang of pain, redemption, and hope, stitching together emotions that had long been pushed aside. When it came time to lay the vocals down, he closed his eyes, envisioning George's approving smile. With every take, he felt the walls around his heart crumble further, piece by piece revealing a treasure trove of stories eager to emerge into the world. "Beautiful!" the engineer shouted after one particularly raw take. "You've got something special, Ray. This is real." With each session, he grew more confident, his spirit rising with every note. He left the studio each night with a sense of purpose, feeling like he was weaving a tapestry of his life, thread by thread. The lyrics transformed, revealing layers of healing and resilience. Weeks slipped by, until at last, the day came for him to release his songs. The anticipation was nearly unbearable, but he found strength in the people around him, friends who had come to support him, including the barista who had first encouraged him. Standing in front of the modest crowd at the release part, he felt the weight of their gazes. Excitement mixed with anxiety clawed at his insides, but he had come too far to retreat now. As he stood on the stage, guitar in hand, the lights bright and warm, he took a deep breath. "Thank you all for being here," he spoke, his voice steadying with purpose. "This is more than just music for me. It's my story, woven with struggle, hope, and renewal. I hope you can find your own stories within it." He started to play, pouring every emotion into the strums, the doubts, fears, and victories. As he sang, he could almost feel George beside him, his spirit pushing him forward, fueling his passion as the audience became lost in the melody. The night culminated in warm applause and heartfelt cheers echoing against the walls. Cherished faces lit with pride. Flashes of realization rippled through Ray. He was no longer the invisible man, trapped in the shadows of others. He had reclaimed his voice. Ray left the venue that night with a lightness in his step, knowing he had begun to thread his path anew. For the first time, he felt not only like a musician, but like a part of a greater community, united by the universal truths of music. Together, they celebrated not just the songs, but the journey of every heart that dared to sing. In those moments, Ray understood the real depth of friendship, healing, and the power of music to transform lives. Through his own rebirth, he could finally step into the light, harmonizing his melody with those around him, and stitching together his future one note at a time. The days following Ray's release celebration felt like a whirlwind. He was riding a wave of newfound energy, each morning greeting him with expectations and possibilities he had nearly forgotten. Yet beneath the excitement, a cloud of uncertainty occasionally hovered, casting shadows that whispered doubts he had thought long buried. The night had shown him the power of his voice, but he still grappled with the fear that there might be an even harder battle ahead, a reckoning with his past, specifically around George. One afternoon, as Ray was tuning his guitar on the porch of his small apartment, the sun dipping low and painting the horizon in warm hues, he received a surprise text. It was from George's manager, extending an invitation for Ray to perform at one of George's upcoming concerts, a special charity event promoting music education in schools. Ray's heart raced. This was a monumental opportunity, a chance to stand on the same stage as a man who had been pivotal in his life. For a moment, he felt like a child again, excited yet terrified. He texted back his acceptance, but waves of anxiety rolled in almost immediately. Could he really face George again after everything? As the day of the concert approached, Ray fell into a restless cycle of rehearsals. Each evening, he poured his heart into rehearsing the songs that had come alive in him while battling a fierce storm of conflicting emotions. Did he still feel overshadowed by George's legacy? Would he be able to reconnect? Or would deeper wounds surface, reopening wounds he thought were healing? On concert day, Ray arrived at the venue, anticipation clashing with anxiety. The arena buzzed with the voices of eager fans, the energy palpable. Walking through the backstage corridors brought a tide of memories rushing back, echoes of laughter, blissful moments shared with George when they were both young, striving musicians. When he finally stepped into the green room, he spotted George in the corner. A little older, with laughter lines etched into his face, he looked just as Ray remembered, yet somehow larger than life, an embodiment of the success Ray had always admired, but also longed to escape. "Hey, Ray," George exclaimed, beaming as he turned to give him a bear hug, enveloping him in warmth. "It's great to see you, man. I heard you performed at that open mic night. People say you've got something special." "Thanks, George. It's been a journey," Ray replied, gauging the sincerity in George's eyes. "Collecting stories to tell through music, huh?" His eyes sparkled. "That's what it's all about." Ray felt a wave wash over him, mixing old feelings of envy with an unexpected gratitude for George's support. "I want you to know, everything I've done, I owe in part to what we shared," he confessed, searching for the right words, struggling to put years of mixed emotions into a few genuine sentences. George chuckled lightly. "I've always believed that music brings people together. It connects us even through our struggles." Standing there, Ray realized that George had effortlessly bridged countless nuances as they had woven through their past, like threads in a tapestry that still remained vibrant. "But what if we took it a step further?" George continued, half sitting on a couch. "What if we collaborated tonight, just like we used to, singing together?" Ray's heart raced at the suggestion, almost surreal, yet so inviting. "Are you sure? I wouldn't want to take away from your set." George waved a dismissive hand, his laughter ringing like a bell. "This is about the music, after all. Besides, every note you've played deserves to be heard. No pressure, just what feels right." Understood. The burden of uncertainty began to lift. The prospect of performing together felt like a guiding light amid the chaos of Ray's thoughts. As the time for the concert drew closer, they rehearsed some familiar songs, those once shared in youthful exuberance, but now reborn through their current significance. Ray lost track of time, entranced by the harmony growing between them. There was magic in their collaboration, with two hearts resonating, a blend of history and healing. As they took the stage together, the overwhelming roar of fans welcomed them like a long-lost embrace. The lights washed over them, and Ray felt a sense of belonging envelop him. He could see George in the moment, poised and in control, and yet all he could focus on was the pulse of the music beneath his fingers, an electric connection that mirrored the beating of his own heart. As they launched into the first song, Ray recalled fond memories of their dreams, the laughter and the burdens alike. Emotion coursed through every line, and the audience echoed his crescendo, riding the waves of nostalgia and joy that seemed to flow effortlessly between the two men. Towards the end of their set, Ray felt a moment of hesitation creeping in, a familiar anxiety that had plagued him for years. Would he ever truly feel equal on this stage? But then George caught his eye, a reassuring grin illuminating his face, and suddenly it all fell into place. "All right, we're going to close with a tune that means a lot to both of us," George announced, his voice firm yet warm, pulling Ray from his thoughts. "A song about rediscovering our voices." The familiar chords resonated in the air as they sang. Ray's heart swelled, enveloped in healing that transcended their individual experiences. The lyrics, filled with hope, redemption, and the strength born from struggles, lit the stage like stars, guiding lost souls home. When they finished, the applause washed over them like a gentle tide, overwhelming Ray with gratitude. The audience was on their feet, cheering as memories intertwined, reminding Ray of the power of music to create intimacy and belonging. In that moment, he felt lighter, the ghosts of insecurity fading further into the background. George, standing beside him, filled the space between them with warmth rather than comparison. This connection had always existed. He just needed to uncover it. After the show, as they stepped off stage, George turned to Ray, his face glowing with a mix of pride and camaraderie. "You did it, Ray. I always knew you had it in you," he said, his affection genuine and affirming. Ray beamed back, words tumbling out in a rush. "Thank you for being there, for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." As they shared a heartfelt embrace, Ray felt the final threads of fear unraveling completely. With George standing beside him, the weight of his past transformed into something beautiful, a promise of connection and the hope of new beginnings. The road ahead was bright. He was finally ready to own his narrative and make his mark on the world, side by side with a friend who had always believed in the power of their shared journey. In the coming days, Ray would merge art with honesty, and together with George, they would evoke change, healing, and renaissance both for themselves and for countless others, united through the vibrant tapestry of their music. In the weeks following the concert, life for Ray and George blossomed like the first hints of spring, fresh, inviting, and filled with the promise of new possibilities. Ray immersed himself in songwriting, eager to craft tunes that embodied experiences he wished to share. He often found himself reminiscing about their shared past, the laughter-filled nights spent dreaming under the stars, and the struggles that now felt distant, yet ever present, in shaping who he had become. The momentum from the concert forged an unexpected collaboration, pulling them closer together as musical comrades. They enjoyed cozy sessions at George's ranch, a sanctuary where the air buzzed with creativity. In the comfort of the country setting, surrounded by sprawling fields and the distant sound of coyotes howling at dusk, the two men formed a partnership that felt right, genuine. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the sky in hues of deep orange and violet, they sat on the porch with their guitars, crafting new songs. A gentle breeze whispered through the trees, and the world felt infinite. "This one's got a good groove," George said, strumming along to the rhythm Ray initiated. "But I feel like we need to dig deeper with the lyrics. What do we want to say?" Ray paused, contemplating the essence of the message. "Maybe we can speak to our journey, a reminder that it's okay to stumble but always rise again," he suggested, his heart mirroring the sincerity of his words. "Absolutely," George replied, nodding emphatically. "Let's show them that vulnerability can be a strength." The creativity flowed freely, every chord bringing them closer to a sense of clarity and purpose that had often eluded Ray. Through music, they navigated the uncharted waters of acceptance of their past steps, the mistakes made, and the lessons learned. In each session, laughter and camaraderie eclipsed any lingering tension. Ray found solace in George's unwavering belief in him. As their new songs progressed, the duo decided to hold a public showcase, inviting a small circle of friends, family, and local musicians to hear their work. The night was intimate, filled with warmth and support as the audience sat close, eager to be part of the experience. When the evening arrived, Ray felt a familiar flutter of nerves as he stood backstage, waiting for their name to be called. This time, however, he recognized the nerves for what they were, an exhilarating anticipation rather than an agonizing fear. George stood beside him, radiating calm, a beacon of quiet strength. "Let's remind them why we're here," George said with a reassuring smile, and Ray found comfort in those words, letting them wash over him like a gentle wave. As they stepped onto the small stage, the dim lights glowing warmly against their faces, Ray felt a surge of gratitude and belonging. He glanced at the audience, familiar faces filled with encouragement, friends who had invested in his journey. He was no longer alone. Ray started strumming the guitar, the chords ringing out into the space. The first song spoke of embracing one's flaws, weaving stories of struggles and triumph into melodies. At first he worried that the rawness of his emotions would overwhelm him, and yet, with every strum, he felt liberated. The music flowed through him like a healing balm. "I used to think my past defined me," Ray sang, his voice growing stronger with each note. "But now I see it's a part of my journey, guiding me home." The audience swayed, captivated by the lyrics that rang with authenticity. Every heartfelt note drew them into Ray's story. Their faces reflected back the beauty of shared vulnerability, and he felt a real connection blossom like blooming flowers after a long winter. After a set filled with emotion and honesty, they transitioned into their collaboration, a song that echoed the heartache and growth both men had experienced in their lives. As the last chords rang out, Ray looked out at the crowd, their enthusiasm washing over him like a warm breeze. Glancing at George, he saw pride lighting his friend's eyes, a reminder that acceptance wasn't about being the perfect artist. It was about being true to oneself. They stepped down from the stage into a whirlwind of applause, the sense of camaraderie palpable, as friends and family rushed to them, celebrating not just the performance, but the journey it represented. "Ray, that was amazing!" someone shouted, and the cheers resonated around them. "Unbelievable," came another voice, the excitement contagious. George grinned widely. "You see, you're not just standing in my shadow anymore. You've carved your own path." Ray felt a warmth blossom inside him. Acceptance had arrived in the form of recognition, both from others and himself. He had faced his fears and emerged stronger, a feeling of belonging radiating like a lantern in the dark. As the night extended into laughter-filled conversations, Ray felt an unshakable bond solidifying between him, George, and their friends. Together, they shared stories of struggles, victories, and how music had bridged the gaps between them. Eventually, as the crowd began to thin, Ray caught George's eye and gestured toward the porch outside. "Let's go out for a moment," he suggested. The soothing night air greeted them like an old friend as they stepped outside, stars glittering brightly above. "You did it, Ray," George said, pride evident in his voice. "You embraced who you are. I'm proud of you." Ray looked at his friend, gratitude washing over him. "It was you who kept me hopeful," he acknowledged, grateful for what their friendship had meant in his life. True friendship reveals itself in times of struggle, but it thrives in the light too, George replied, a wisdom lingering in his words. Under the vast sky, Ray felt a sense of acceptance settle deep within him. He had taken significant steps on his journey toward understanding. The power of vulnerability, the ability to share his truth, and the endless possibilities that awaited him. As they shared silent smiles in that tranquil night, Ray realized that real acceptance came from recognizing the beauty in the messy journey. They were all imperfect, but it was precisely these imperfections that created a unique symphony of life. In that moment, under the starlit ambience, Ray understood he was finally embracing his own narrative, no longer overshadowed, but intertwined deeply with his truth. The journey ahead appeared brighter than ever, alive with opportunities for growth, marking the beginning of a new chapter he was ready to write alongside George and the community that had embraced him. In the months that followed, life blossomed for Ray. His collaboration with George ignited a new energy within him, with their shared rhythm transforming his once timid hopes into powerful melodies. They played shows across the region, each performance forging deeper connections with audiences eager to hear songs that captured the essence of struggle and triumph. One night, after a particularly moving concert, as applause thundered through the venue, Ray felt a wave of warmth wash over him. Faces in the crowd reflected stories of heartache, joy, and resilience, and he realized that every strum of his guitar was not just his story. It was a shared narrative echoed by many. "Your song about finding strength in struggle changed my life," a woman exclaimed, gratitude shining in her eyes. Ray's heart swelled. The heartbeat of his music resonated with others, turning vulnerability into connection. In the studio, surrounded by instruments and creativity, George often reminded Ray of the importance of staying true to himself. "You're carving your own path, Ray. Just be you," he urged, his tone firm yet encouraging. Yet despite this newfound clarity as an artist, Ray felt a pull. An unresolved chapter from his past nagged at him. Seeking closure, he knew he had to reach out to those he had hurt during tougher times, family and friends who had witnessed his struggles with addiction and avoidance. One by one, he began having heartfelt conversations. Sitting with an old friend, he took a breath, his heart pounding. "I know I've hurt people with my actions. I'm truly sorry," he said. His friend's face softened with understanding. "It's good to see you owning your past, Ray. We all have battles. What matters is how we fight them." Each conversation paved the way for healing. Through vulnerability and candidness, Ray found forgiveness blossoming in places he had assumed were lost. It was as if every acknowledgement of his past mistakes was a step toward freeing himself from the heavy chains of guilt that had once weighed him down. Months later, it was time for a major music festival, one where he would be sharing the stage with George once again. As they stood before the expansive crowd, excitement surged through Ray. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant colors, and he breathed in the vastness of the moment. As they began their set, Ray felt a sense of calm envelop him. When he addressed the audience, he shared his journey openly. "I've faced my share of struggles," he confessed. "I'm grateful for the lessons learned and for the people who stood by me." Applause erupted like cheers from a shared embrace washing over him. Standing next to George, who smiled with pride, Ray knew that acceptance and healing had come full circle. Their music had transformed into a powerful reminder of the beauty in imperfection. With each song, a tapestry of laughter, tears, and shared experiences came alive. Ray's heart raced, and as they concluded the performance with their collaborative piece, he felt renewed, a man who had moved beyond fear, embracing his truth and the community that had embraced him in return. Returning to the dressing room, Ray turned to George with a newfound sense of purpose. "I feel like I have finally found my voice," he said, the weight of his journey fading. "Together, we created something special," George replied, placing a hand on Ray's shoulder. "This is just the beginning." Underneath the shimmer of stars that night, Ray finally recognized the journey didn't end. It was a continuing narrative, rich with potential and love. Filled with gratitude for every moment, he stepped boldly into the future, ready to write the next chapter, not just as a musician but as a voice of hope, a bridge for others who felt lost. As he looked ahead, he realized that vulnerability had become his greatest strength, music his greatest ally. The symphony of life, woven through stories of struggle and renewal, would remain the fabric of his journey, a journey that was only just beginning.